back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast for Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Today, we begin our official coverage of The Acolyte, beginning with us sharing a little bit of a round table with Leslye Headland that the Triad was lucky enough to be able to be a part of.
Fortunate and blessed.
It's amazing. I can't believe we continue to get these incredible opportunities.
It's something that we do not take for granted. But before we get going with like all these fun Acolyte festivities, because as anyone who has been listening to us for the last couple of years, I guess, since they announced like all these Disney Plus shows, like this is the one. This is
that
the
we've
show
been most
that
looking
we
forward
have
to.
been unanimous in our excitement for. Because when Andor was announced, there was like
I was excited. You were a little
there was dissension among the ranks of like who's excited for what, and but Acolyte has been a collective excitement. But before we get going with that, I think it's a monumental event, in fact, because we're continuing and starting this journey with Triad and the Acolyte. But in a way, it's also a conclusion of something that started 3 years ago, and it's a moment that I'd really like to take to just congratulate you, because you are done with law school.
Yes, I did. I finished law school. I can't believe it. It's insane.
For anyone that has been listening to us for like this season 5, you know that like the last couple of weeks have been quiet on our end, and it's because Nani has been studying for finals. And today she comes out of her shell for a minute after a grueling experience, taking all her final law school exams that you apparently didn't do too shabby on.
No, not too shabby.
You're a fucking nerd, and you.
Hey, nerd and proud.
You killed it. Good, and as you should. So from the bottom of my heart, congratulations, and I'm sure that everyone else is also proud of you. I mean, this podcast started when you started law school, so it's
crazy.
It's insane to think that as we start then, we continue now, and you close this chapter, and now you continue on with a different chapter as you hunker down for the
study
bar,
to the bar,
the bar exam. So, like I said, congratulations! Extremely proud of you, and we're rooting for you to just kill the bar now and break the curve, or whatever the translation for that phrase in English is, and just pass it on the first try, so that you may be a kick-ass lawyer. But yeah, Acolyte, man, it's here. I can't believe it. It's wild. It's one of those things where it's the time paradox, right? In the same way that we're celebrating you finishing this law school, is also like, wait, but this has been 3 years, and then it's also like, wait, but Acolyte is here, but we just heard about it a couple of weeks ago, and tonight, as we're recording, is the official premiere on Disney Plus. And we're so excited to share this show with everybody. I mean, share us if we made it to share this experience,
to share our opinions,
to share our opinions, to share this experience with everybody. It's wild. It's wild that it's here. And like you said, like we were very, very, very blessed to have been invited kind of last minute to have a roundtable interview with the showrunner and director / writer of the show. Leslye Headland, amazing person who has done like a bunch of really cool shows. I mean, most notably Russian Doll. So it's wild to be in the virtual presence of this person, and with other really good friends and podcasters to do this roundtable and ask some interesting questions, and we got some interesting answers. It was funny because I thought I had like a bunch of questions ready for her,
right?
And because the interview invitation came out kind of late, I had to scramble, right? And I'm going from work,
not so much time to prepare.
And then, and then obviously the show hasn't come out, so I'm just like, okay, what the hell am I gonna ask?
How much can I ask without spoiling? And
right, and so it was tough. So I had like a couple of questions that I was just like, okay, these are gonna be pretty good. These are gonna be pretty banger. And the one that I like, because you have to have your backups, right? Because all the other podcasters that are gonna be there, could
Yeah, you
ask
don't
a
know what
similar
order is
question.
gonna be your turn to ask, and yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then Keith, Kerwin, from Father-Son
Yeah.
was there, and as always, they always crush it, and they were the first person to ask a question, and his first question was so similar to the question that I wanted to
Right.
ask first that threw
Like,
me for a
crap!
loop, and I was
That
like,
that
"Damn it!"
gets rid
Like,
of my question.
yeah, I was gonna phrase it a little differently, obviously,
Right.
but like it was similar enough that
Too
I'm just like,
close.
I can't
Mhm.
answer this.
Yeah.
So I went with my second question, which, if you know Triad, is the type of like question that we like to talk about a lot of these shows like Andor and Acolyte, and with
Mhm.
diversity and whatnot, and how we include diverse voices into Star Wars. And it was weird because as Leslye was answering the question,
Yeah.
I was just like, this is not what I asked.
Yeah, don't spoil it.
I'm
We're
not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna
we're
spoil it.
including the but I when I listened to the interview as well, I was like, "Wait, I mean, that is a way to answer it, but I'm pretty sure that's not what Goose was asking."
Yes, and,
Yeah.
and we can
Mhm.
talk about it like after
Mhm.
the interview
Mhm.
portion, after everyone listens to it. But
Mhm.
I had some conspiracy theories about it, and we'll get to it.
Mm.
But
Okay.
yeah, and to top it off, as if it weren't enough to be able to participate in this roundtable with Leslye, and we were also very fortunate to be invited to
Do the premiere.
the U.S. premiere and the world premiere, in that sense, because it was the first time that it happened for the show, of the Acolyte down in Hollywood, California. Something that like I was not expecting we would be able to attend, because I was just like, okay, well, if they invite us, it's gonna be like Andor, and if it's like Andor, it's gonna be like the week before the interview, and
Right.
then I mean not the interview, the premiere on Disney Plus, and I was doing the math because I was in
Yeah.
London last week, so and at that point I was like, okay, well, if I'm in London that week, let me
Then
see
Nani
when
can
the
go probably. And then I was like,
exactly.
but I'm like in finals, transitioning to study for the bar. I don't think I can make it. Like, what are we gonna do?
And this
But
is even before we like got it. We were like, okay,
right.
let's hedge our
Yeah.
bets. Let's just
Just
hedge our bets.
assuming that we might get it. Yeah. Mhm.
But then we were like, nah, we can't do it, because it's gonna be while I'm in London, while you're studying. So like the
Yeah.
whole stars weren't aligning. So we were already we had given up. But then when
Yeah.
the invitation that we were always surprised to get just came through, it was
And
like the most
very happy that
perfect,
we get. Mhm.
the most perfect of timing, because it was the day before I was flying out to London. So I'm just like, can I achieve this? Is this a thing
Something that
that
I
is
can do.
yes? Is this a thing that I'm going to be able to achieve? Like, can I go to California and then go to? It was such a convoluted thing, because in my mind I was like, okay, I'll fly to California and then I'll fly
Mhm.
back to Chicago to get on my trip to London, and
Mhm.
so much juggling that I was planning for. But then I'm just like, goose, just make it simpler. Just fly from California, London,
To London.
do it, and just relax. And very glad I did, because it was such a one of a kind experience. It was definitely the closest to the Andor premiere that we have been able to experience, because all of our friends were there.
Yeah.
Chase was there, Alex was there, Molly was there. New friends were there as well. Jason from the This That Reads podcast. So many really cool people that were there that we got to uh, hang out with. We got to finally meet Zoraida Cordova in person,
Oh
because
yeah.
all the luminous authors were there, which was the right thing, because they started the High Republic with
Yeah.
the whole publishing effort.
Agreed.
So it was only
Mhm.
right that all these authors would be able to share in this momentous occasion. And it was a beautiful thing, something that never take for granted, and something that is wonderful to be a part of, even if it's just tangentially. uh, Saw Pablo Hidalgo has a beautiful beard now, and the person that I was definitely the person that I was the most nervous to take a picture with.
Right.
Pablo Hidalgo. I was able to take one with Iman, with Ezra, or Jabba the Hutt, depending on who you are. It was great. It was great, amazing. And then we got to see those two episodes, which were phenomenal. But we'll talk. We'll review them a little bit after we listen to this interview, because I'm sure that everyone that's tuning in is tuning in to hear the interview that we were supposed to release last week.
Right.
But then I was in London, so I couldn't. So now we're releasing it late. But
Time.
it's late, but it's perfect timing too because it's
Of course.
Acolyte. It's Acolyte Day and it's Acolyte Week, and it's gonna be Acolyte Month. So
Mhm.
let's just celebrate Acolyte. But yeah, without further ado, here's
Here's
our
the
roundtable
interview.
interview with Leslye.
Enjoy.
Hi. So my question for you is, how did your work on previous shows such as Russian Doll influence your vision and direction for the Acolyte?
How did my work on other shows shape the vision? I mean, certainly Russian Doll, I'd say. That was an intricate story, obviously, with the Groundhog Day um, element, having to keep track of this storyline that sort of spiraled down into the heart of what the story was about. And I hope we've achieved sort of the Star Wars version of that with this storyline, with the Rashomon elements and seeing things from two different sides, both between Mandala's characters. Am I allowed to say that? I am. Okay, great. Sorry, you guys. I'm still unclear on what I'm allowed to talk about. So, where was I? I was talking about, oh yes, the duality and kind of flipping back and forth between who's good and who's bad. This is a point of view of one character. This is the other point of view from another character. So that's I would say that prepared me really well for the story we ended up telling here.
Hi, Trisha Barr for Fangirls Going Rogue podcast. You in the Acolyte, you're using one of my favorite archetypes, the witch. A lot of current storytelling is challenging patriarchal tropes about witches. What do you want to bring to the cultural perspective of witches?
What do I want to bring to the cultural what of witches? Sorry.
The cultural perspective of witches.
Oh, perspective. Well, I think that they, of course they're witches, and that's an element that George and Dave created with the Clone Wars. But I do think that my version of it is more about uh, a collective that utilizes the Force differently than the Jedi do and would rather be left alone so that they can develop their own way of manipulating it, use it, whether it's for good or bad is kind of left up to the audience's interpretation of them. So I guess that's how I would be challenging the perspective.
Hi, this is George and Josh Bate with the Holofiles. Leslye, thank you so much. Really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
It seems that one of the great tenets of working at Lucasfilm is collaboration with so many different departments, individuals, things like that. As you worked on The Acolyte, did you consult with other filmmakers who had directed and written other Star Wars stories? I know Rian Johnson had directed one of your first scripts and then obviously did The Last Jedi. I'm not sure if you consulted with him or other Star Wars writers, directors in crafting The Acolyte.
Well, it's interesting. I worked so closely with my designers, and all of them were very well versed in either their fandom for Star Wars or their understanding of it aesthetically. And also, they were very familiar with the aesthetic of the High Republic as well. So we did a lot of trial and error, we did a lot of collaboration, we did an enormous amount of presentations to each other so that all the departments were on the same page. So I do think that that really was the key to making a show like this one. You can't do it on your own. It's got to be between you and your team.
Hi, James Burns from Jedi News here. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So my question for you is, there's a lot of people out there that have never ever read anything from the High Republic because they just, tune into the films and watch content on Disney Plus. So how would you pitch the Acolyte to them?
Oh, I would say pitching the Acolyte to people who are unfamiliar with the High Republic, I would say this is a fresh entry point. It could definitely elevate the show if you've had the experience of immersing yourself in that in beautiful world. But you certainly don't need to have read anything or know any references to it because we are taking place a bit out, a bit closer to the prequels than the High Republic. So hopefully we have enough referencing of the High Republic, but we're not leaning on it narratively to support our story. I would like to think that our story stands on its own.
Hi, Leslye. I'm Gustavo from Triad of the Force. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. My question also has to do with the High Republic. But before getting into the High Republic, Star Wars has, I think, been known a little bit for being slower to embrace diversity in it, not just its casting, but also in the stories it tells about diversity. Through the High Republic and that publishing effort, we have seen a lot of diversity with the characters that are finally introduced, be it with their races or their sexualities, but also the stories that we tell about them. With the Acolyte, how do you embrace that ethos that the High Republic publishing effort has done to not just bring in diverse characters, but also to tell diverse stories?
Well, I hope that, as you know, if you're a Star Wars fan, my hope is that you will notice the different elements of Star Wars that we have brought, other Star Wars media that we have brought into the Acolyte. We're referencing the High Republic with the design of the robes, with including the character of Renester Grow. I think that we're definitely referencing Clone Wars when we explore the witches and the Coven that Jodie Turner-Smith leads. So there's that. I think a lot of the fact that we're using practical elements, we're using real sets, that really, I think, lends itself to the original trilogy. And then where the Jedi are in their trajectory is very close to what ends up happening to them in The Phantom Menace. So hopefully we're merging a lot of those storylines to feel more diverse and hopefully exciting because of that.
Hi, Leslye. Jason of ThisDadReads here. This is a big moment, like we've been saying, for the Star Wars book community. I just want to know, what message do you have for the High Republic book fans out there in anticipation of the release of The Acolyte?
Oh, I want to say I love you. Thank you for investing in a world and an era that I think is so new. And I definitely had that experience working on Acolyte. You're diving into something that isn't referencing the live action canon or the Skywalker saga. So you're willing to dive in at a particular entry point and enjoy the stories of the Jedi and what George created in a different context. So I would hope that you have a similar experiencing, a similar experience watching The Acolyte. Sorry. My mouth is really dry. Okay.
Thanks for chatting with us. William Devereaux from the Ion Canon podcast. George Lucas loved symmetry and parallels in Star Wars. In many ways, The Acolyte feels like a reflection of The Phantom Menace, kind of as you alluded to earlier, from the use of the Force to create life, to the Jedi testing process, eventually admitting an older child to be trained as a Jedi. And of course, twins are a Star Wars staple. I'm assuming this was intentional. And if so, how did you balance drawing the parallels to The Phantom Menace and other films without making it feel too similar?
It was difficult, for sure. You want to hit all the particular tropes that make something feel Star Wars. Like I said, those practical sets, the familial clashing, the struggle between master apprentice, father daughter, sister sister. All of those things, I think, are elements of George's stories. Ahsoka and Anakin, Luke and Anakin, Obi-Wan and Anakin. I was hoping to embody that particular, all of those particular tropes and elements. It was daunting. Hopefully we've achieved it in a way that feels both fresh, but also very reverent to what George has created.
Hi, Leslye. It's Charlotte and Caitlin from Skytalkers. So great to talk with you today. You recently said in an interview that the episode The Wrong Jedi from the Clone Wars was a favorite and provided some inspiration to The Acolyte. What was it about that episode that stayed with you and maybe found its way into the Acolyte?
Well, there are two elements of that episode that I think show up in the Acolyte. First of all, the wrongful um, uh, accusation of a character that they've committed a crime, a really horrible crime that they didn't do. So there's definitely that element. It's one of the things that starts the story off. And then the other thing that I love about that episode is Ahsoka's choice to leave the Order, which is something I hadn't really tuned into as like an option that someone could do. So I loved the idea that Osha has left the Order and sort of created a life for herself outside of that identity. So those were the two things from that episode that I was extremely inspired by.
Hello, Leslye. You work closely with Neil Scanlon and the Critch Cantina team at Ironwood to create all kinds of really, really cool stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Oh, absolutely. Neil embraced me immediately, which I was so grateful for. He was very supportive of my ideas and my requests. He does so much. When you get to work with him, whether it was the mask with that element of horror with the smile. That was something that we worked on for a really long time in terms of how to construct it. The character of Basil was someone that I said, I want to do this with a guy in a suit like the old days. I don't want this to be a CGI character. What do you think? How can we execute it? And he worked so hard for months on creating the design of that character, making that character work. The droid Pip was so much fun to work with. Amandla would joke that it was like a little Mercedes Benz in her pocket because every time she was done with a take, they would come and take it from her because it was so it was remote controlled by a puppeteer who was excellent and actually worked with Amandla in rehearsals so that the character felt very much like, so that the droid felt very much like a character. So yeah, Neil was instrumental in all of that.
Hi there, Dan's there from Coffee with Kenobi. Looking forward to seeing what everyone thinks about the Acolyte, as I'm sure you are. And now this question, I don't want to spoil anything, so bear with me. What can you share about May's mission to kill Jedi without the use of a lightsaber? Because it is a unique fighting choice. What inspired that decision creatively?
The choice for May to attack Jedi without a weapon was to put a new spin on how you would attack a Jedi. And meaning this is a time period where not a lot of people are running around with a lightsaber unless you're a Jedi. And so therefore attacking a Jedi without a weapon would be a daunting task and something that would hopefully intrigue the audience.
Hey, this is Sarah with Skywalking through Neverland, and you talked about all the inspirations of Star Wars that you're trying to involve in this show. Well, music is a huge thing that connects Star Wars, and I just wondered, is there a specific point in the narrative that you directed the composer, Michael Abels, to use any particular Star Wars themes or sounds or instrumentation to further that connection?
I didn't really start out giving any direction to Michael. He's brilliant. He's a Pulitzer Prize winning musician. He obviously worked on Jordan Peele's films, which is how I just, was introduced to him. There was an element in the show that I felt needed to feel like John Williams, but also had to have an eerier, darker edge to it to tie into the tone of the show. Initially, I didn't really give him a lot of direction. It was more once we got into specific cues that I would say I would give certain direction. Like, this just doesn't feel, very Star Warsy to me. Or he would say, I think this is a really huge moment because a lightsaber is being pulled out, and I would say, yeah, but it's the bad guy pulling out a lightsaber. So, and we would kind of have those really spirited conversations about how to execute or how to support choices that were elements of Star Wars that we've seen before, but be specifically in his perspective and voice and point of view as a composer.
So I hoped all of you enjoyed that interview. I certainly did, especially because I actually haven't had the chance to watch the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte yet. I was unable to go to the premiere because law school, finals, all the things that are happening. And I was hoping to be able to watch it before we recorded this tonight, June the 4th, but it released later in the night that I was expecting it to. So I still don't actually know what happens in these episodes. So I'm super excited. This interview makes me even more excited because I feel like Leslye is someone who not only respects what Star Wars is, but is an actual fan.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're bringing just all these different perspectives, and the fact that in one of the answers to the questions, like one of the things that she's most excited about is the fact that it's a little bit like set apart from everything that we know. Like it's not Skywalker adjacent, so there's more freedom of creation, and it's also a little bit removed from what we have already of the High Republic, so you don't necessarily have to be super immersed into the world of the High Republic, which I haven't had the time to read yet. I encourage everybody to do so. Of course, Goose has read a bunch of them already and
Not
loves
all
them.
of it, but a bunch, yes.
But a bunch of them. And a lot of the people that we've talked to, that some of them are like really immersed, some of them have only read a few of the things of High Republic. Everybody's like really excited about what it is. But the fact that she's kind of clear about the fact that you can come into it not really knowing much about the High Republic, and you can just like dip your toes into it and just like start figuring everything out. I love that about it, which is one of the things that I really loved about The Mandalorian, that you didn't really have to know much to feel like you were a part of the story. And if this opens up people to start exploring about the High Republic and just Star Wars in general, if this is the first Star Wars thing that they've ever seen, it's a really good place to start. So I'm just really excited to be able to watch it myself. You saw the first 2 episodes, Goose, and you got to see it during the premiere with a bunch of fans, which I know from our experience in Andor, that it's completely different to watch something like this in a room full of people that are actual fans that love the franchise and not, the haters. So
Star Wars belongs on the big screen, 100%.
And it was the same theater that they did Andor, right?
Yeah, El Capitan Theater. Correct.
Which is like this old school, just gorgeous theater.
Disney has synergy because they own the theaters. It's just like, hey, we just keep it in the family. Disney, Lucasfilm, El Capitan. But no, but I agree with you, because in a way, Acolyte is kind of the opposite of Andor, and I don't mean that in terms of like tone or anything. I just mean in terms of how it's created,
where it's placed.
Andor is created by Tony Gilroy, who is not a fan of Star Wars. And when I say he's not a fan of Star Wars, I mean he doesn't know anything about it. So he's coming at it from an outsider's perspective to give us something new from outside of the fandom. And Leslye is the opposite in that regard, right? She's giving us something new, but within that fandom. So it's I think the beauty of where Star Wars is right now, that the tapestry is so rich that we can have like so many different creators coming in to tell all these stories and have stories that are awesome in both regards, but coming at it from this perspective. So I think that was Andor was really refreshing to see something that was completely new and detached, quote unquote, tonally from all the Star Wars that we've seen before. But Acolyte is fresh and refreshing for the opposite reason, because it feels like it's the most Star Warsy thing that we have gotten. It's very prequely, but it also pays homage to the sequels. It's a new era, but it's familiar, but it's also new. It's exciting. It's really, really cool. The performances are top notch, and like you were saying, it's set in like that new era of the High Republic. That if you read that's a cool thing. You don't have to read the books to get in. It's a fresh starting point, the same way that Mando was a fresh starting point, the same way that Rebels was for a lot of people. Acolyte is a fresh point for anyone to come into the saga. But if you read the books, you will be rewarded, because full disclosure, I had access to the first 4 episodes, but I decided not to watch episodes 3 and 4 because the season's only 8 episodes long, so I don't want to.
And you didn't want to get to the halfway point.
I don't want to watch. Yeah, I don't want to watch half the season in a
and not be able to talk about it with anybody till
right, exactly. A crappy screener with a watermark on. No, I want to enjoy it with everybody.
Cinematic quality.
Exactly. So so I don't know what more High Republic book connections might be in episodes 3, 4, and beyond. But at least in episodes 2, there's a couple that if you know type of things. I don't want to ruin it right now for anyone that hasn't seen it. Because it's still the show's just premiered and everyone's still trying to catch up with it. So I'm gonna avoid spoilers on it. But if you read the books,
I did think it was
there are
really
some
cool
things that you can pick up.
That she did said that being having knowledge of the books and having read some of them elevates your experience of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't hinder the people that haven't read them, but it elevates it for those who have. So I think that's a really cool way to tackle a project like this. So
yeah, it's really clever because it's kind of everything it needs to be and more, because it's familiar, because it's Star Wars and it has Jedi, and there's you can see the Jedi temple, and that's not a spoiler because we see it in the trailers. But you have all the things that we are familiar with Star Wars from the prequels, but it's also new because it's completely in the past, so there's no familiar characters. It's tied to the publishing effort, so it's great. It's great. I don't want to overhype it, but I was very, very happy with the show so far. Episode 2. I mean, it could still drop the ball, and if it does, we'll talk about it.
We'll criticize as we do.
We try to be nuanced here, but not
constructive criticism when we can. But
call a spade, but also from a position, from a place of good faith. But yeah, I'm really excited to take this journey, and I think that we will have I know we have a full supporting roster of other people that will be joining us in the next couple of weeks to discuss the Acolyte, and they're all heavy hitters, and I'm very happy with the guests that we've been able to collect. I feel like Thanos with the Infinity Stones. So I've collected all these wonderful guests to discuss the Acolyte, and I guess it will just reveal the first one today. If you're listening, we're recording tomorrow with our very good friend Alex Damon from Star Wars Explained, whom we shared at the premiere down in LA. We might or might not have done karaoke after the fact. You'll just have to dig our social medias to see if that is true or not. But he will be joining us to discuss the premiere episodes, and we'll also be on Star Wars Explained for episode 7, I think it is. So stay tuned for that, because it'll the crossover of the century. Oh, well, I think the crossover of the century was while I was in London. As everyone knows, I'm a big Beatles fan, so I went to Abbey Road. I had to go to Abbey Road to see Abbey Road studio, but also be at the cross, at the cross street where they did the famous Abbey Road album cover. And long story short, I did the thing, whatever, you have to cross the crosswalk, obviously. But while that was happening, all of a sudden a double-decker bus just crosses the Abbey Road crosswalk with Acolyte advertising.
No.
And I was just
it's a sign.
And I was just like, this cannot be more perfect. It's Star Wars, Acolyte, the Beatles, all clashing together.
All good things. All good things.
And all good things must come to an end. And I think at this point, this is a good teaser for what is to come for our next review series, where we will finally be covering the Acolyte.
Yes. So I apologize in advance. I'm not sure how many episodes I'll be able to join in, because as you've heard in this episode, I'm going to be sequestered studying for the bar. It's a 3-month-long process. So if I'm not around, please forgive me. I love you all. I'm very excited about the Acolyte. I hope all of you are too. So just please subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think of the Acolyte so far, if you got a chance to watch it, what you're expecting to see from it. And, until next time, may the Force be with you.
For light and life, baby.